Every secure system in the world, whether it's Microsoft 365, Azure, a VPN gateway, a firewall, or even your banking app, relies on three invisible pillars. Not five, not 10, just three: authentication, authorization, and accounting. Together, they're known as AAA, the foundation of identity and access management. If you are preparing for SC-300, or working in cybersecurity, or designing enterprise architecture, you must deeply understand these three concepts. Because everything in modern security, zero trust, conditional access, role-based access control, privileged identity management, is built on AAA. Today, we're going beyond definitions. We will understand what each one really means, how they work in real enterprise environments, how they apply to Microsoft Entra ID, and why confusing them leads to security gaps. Let's start with the first ACE. Part 1, Authentication. Who are you? Before systems trust you, before permissions are calculated, before data is revealed, one question must be answered. Who are you? Authentication is identity verification. It is the digital equivalent of standing at a secure checkpoint and being asked to prove your identity, not your intentions, not your role, not your access level, just your identity. Are you really who you claim to be? If the system cannot answer that question with certainty, everything stops. No access, no evaluation, no next step. Authentication is always the first gate. Why authentication exists? In the physical world, identity can be verified by a passport, a driver's license, a biometric scan, a security badge. In the digital world, identity is verified through credentials, and credentials must be validated by a trusted authority. In Microsoft environments, that trusted authority is often Microsoft Entra ID. How authentication actually works. Let's slow this down and walk through what really happens. When you sign into Microsoft 365, Step 1, you enter your username. At that moment, the system determines which identity provider is responsible for you. Are you a cloud-only user? Are you synchronized from on-premises Active Directory? Are you federated through ADFS? The system routes the request accordingly. Step 2, you enter your password. The identity provider validates that password against its stored credentials or hash. If passwordless authentication is configured, you may instead use Microsoft Authenticator, FIDO2 security key, Windows Hello for business, certificate-based authentication. Step 3, if policies require it, multi-factor authentication is triggered. Now you must prove something additional, something you have, something you are. This dramatically reduces identity compromise risk. Step 4, if everything checks out, the system generates an authentication token. This token is crucial. It is proof. It says, this identity has been verified. That token is digitally signed, time-bound, and trusted by other services like Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Teams, custom enterprise applications. Without that token, no service will trust you. Authentication is not just login. It is token issuance. And tokens are the currency of trust in modern identity systems. Authentication does not give you power. It gives you recognition. You are known. You are verified. But you are not yet authorized. That decision comes next. Imagine you are at an international airport. Before you even approach the boarding gate, before you access a lounge, before you step onto the aircraft, you must pass identity verification. You present your passport. The officer checks. Is it valid? Does a photo match? Is it expired? Is it tampered with? If verification fails, you go nowhere. If verification succeeds, you are recognized as a legitimate traveler. But notice something important. Just because your passport is valid does not mean you can board any plane. It does not mean you can enter restricted airport zones. It only proves your identity. That is authentication. The boarding pass? That's authorization. The CCTV recording your movement? That's accounting. Modern authentication is evolving. Traditional authentication relied heavily on passwords, but passwords can be phished, brute-forced, reused, leaked. Modern identity security shifts toward passwordless authentication, biometric verification, hardware-backed keys, risk-based authentication, continuous authentication. In Microsoft Entra ID, authentication is strengthened by conditional access policies, identity protection risk evaluation, sign-in risk detection, device compliance checks, Authentication today is not just, did you enter the correct password? It is this sign-in normal for this user? Is the location risky? Is the device compliant? Is the behavior suspicious? Identity verification has become contextual. What happens if authentication fails? If authentication fails, no token is issued, no resource is evaluated, no authorization decision is made. Everything ends at the first gate. That is how critical authentication is. It is a foundation of zero trust. Because zero trust begins with never trust, always verify. Authentication answers a question. Who are you? Once that answer is verified with certainty, only then does the system ask the second question. What are you allowed to do? And that is where authorization begins. Authorization. What are you allowed to do? You've proven who you are. Your identity has been verified. The system recognizes you. A trusted token has been issued. Now the system asks a different question. Not who you are, but what are you allowed to do? This is authorization. And this is where control truly begins. Recognition is not permission. Authentication gives you identity. Authorization gives you boundaries. Just because you are inside the system does not mean you can access everything inside it. Being known is not the same as being trusted with privilege. Authorization decides what resources you can access, what actions you can perform, what data you can read or modify, what administrative operations you can execute. It is the enforcement layer of security, how authorization works in real systems. Let's walk through a Microsoft 365 example. You sign in successfully. Now you try to access the Azure portal, reset another user's password, assign a directory role, open a restricted SharePoint site. At this moment, Microsoft Entra ID evaluates. Do you have the required directory role? Are you part of a specific group? Is your privilege role activated through PIM? Are conditional access policies satisfied? Is your device compliant? Authorization is not one check. It is layered decision logic, and it happens in milliseconds. The principle of least privilege. Modern identity systems follow one core rule. Grant only what is necessary. No more, no less. If you are a help desk administrator, you can reset passwords, but you cannot modify conditional access policies. If you are a global administrator, you can manage tenant-wide settings, but ideally, that privilege should be temporary and monitored. Authorization limits blast radius. It reduces damage. If an account is compromised, imagine you are at an international airport. Your passport was verified. You passed identity control. That was authentication. Now you approach the boarding gate. The airline scans your boarding pass. They check, is this flight yours? Is the seat assigned to you? Is boarding still open? If yes, you board. If not, you are stopped. Even though your identity is valid, the passport proves who you are. The boarding pass proves what you're allowed to access. That is authorization. Authorization models in modern identity. There are different ways systems implement authorization. Role-based access control, RBAC, access based on assigned roles. Example, global administrator, application administrator, security reader. If the role is assigned, the permissions come with it. Attribute-based access control, ABAC, access based on context. For example, block access from risky countries, require compliant devices, restrict high-risk sign-ins. Conditional access policies operate this way. Authorization becomes dynamic, just-in-time privilege, PIM. In modern environments, privileged access should not be permanent. Instead, user requests elevation. Approval is required. Access is time-bound. Activity is logged. Authorization becomes temporary and controlled. What happens if authorization fails? Authentication may succeed, but if authorization fails, access is denied. You may see, you do not have permission to perform this action. Access denied. Insufficient privileges. This is not an identity issue. This is a permission issue. And that distinction matters in troubleshooting. Authorization in zero trust. Zero trust says, never trust based on location. Never trust based on network. Never trust based on one-time verification. Authorization decisions can change dynamically. If risk level increases, device becomes non-compliant, role is removed, session conditions change, access can be revoked immediately. Authorization is continuous enforcement. Authentication answers. Who are you? Authorization answers. What are you allowed to do? Authentication gives identity. Authorization defines power. and without strict authorization controls. Authentication alone cannot protect an organization, because knowing who someone is does not guarantee they should have access. That is the difference, and that is authorization. Accounting. What did you do? Authentication verifies who you are. Authorization decides what you are allowed to do. But there is one final question security must answer. After access is granted, after permissions are evaluated, after actions are performed, what did you actually do? That is accounting. And this is where visibility begins. The most ignored pillar of AAA. Authentication controls entry. Authorization controls privilege. Accounting controls accountability. It records who accessed the system, what actions were performed, when the action occurred, from where the action originated, whether it succeeded or failed. Without accounting, you have no traceability. Without traceability, you have no real security. What accounting looks like in Microsoft environments. In Microsoft Entra ID and Microsoft 365, accounting includes sign-in logs, audit logs, role assignment changes, privilege role activations, application consent grants, file access and movement activity, conditional access evaluation results. If someone assigns themselves global administrator, that event is logged. If someone disables MFA, that action is recorded. If someone accesses SharePoint from a risky country, that sign-in is tracked. Accounting creates evidence. Real-world analogy, CCTV and access logs. Let's return to the airport example. Your passport was verified. That was authentication. Your boarding pass was checked. That was authorization. Now imagine cameras throughout the airport. They record when you entered, which gate you approached, when you boarded, whether you attempted restricted access. That is accounting. It does not prevent you from entering. It does not decide your permissions. It records your behavior. And if something goes wrong, those recordings become critical. Why accounting is critical for security. Imagine a breach scenario. An attacker compromises an account. Authentication worked. Authorization worked. But accounting reveals unusual sign-in time, new IP address, privilege role activation, data download activity. Accounting allows incident response, forensic investigation, compliance reporting, regulatory audits, insider threat detection, CM integration. It turns activity into insight. Accounting in zero trust. Zero trust is not only about verifying and limiting access. It is about continuous monitoring. Even after authentication and authorization succeed, systems still observe session behavior, risk changes, privilege usage, data movement patterns. If suspicious activity is detected, access can be revoked. Accounting feeds security intelligence. It powers systems like Microsoft Sentinel, Microsoft Defender XDR, identity protection. Logs are not just records. They are signals. The difference between monitoring and control. Authentication equals verification. Authorization equals enforcement. Accounting equals observation. Observation does not interfere. It documents. And documentation creates accountability. If there are no logs, there is no proof. If there is no proof, there is no investigation. If there is no investigation, there is no improvement. The final concept. Authentication answers. Who are you? Authorization answers. What are you allowed to do? Accounting answers. What did you actually do? Together, they create a complete security model. Without authentication, you cannot verify identity. Without authorization, you cannot control privilege. Without accounting, you cannot trust your security posture. Because security is not just about granting access. It is about verifying identity, limiting power, and recording activity. That is accounting. And that completes the 3 aces of identity and access management.